It's going to be kind of heavy. I will tell you that. It's going to be kind of heavy because it's about the Roblox situation and how terrible it actually is. Because I just learned something today that I thought everybody should know. And it's basically the reason why I won't touch these platforms, why I won't touch Minecraft, why I won't touch Roblox. Because I've heard of this stuff in the back for a long time. You know, I had no proof. I had no big deal, big thing. But now I actually have, you know, proof from multiple different sources that there is something very insidious going on. And first reason why I'm talking about Roblox is because, one, it's in the news. You know, I guess Louisiana's doing a friggin' lawsuit against them. But I mean, I don't think people really understand. These aren't just guys, yes, the child-related stuff. These aren't just like, you know, lonely guys in their basement, you know, exploiting minors. These are organized cults. And here's my first bit of proof. So, basically on Roblox and Discord, where all the child abuse stuff is really happening, we have this. Roblox, a massively popular gaming platform. It's not, okay, I hate how they say that. It's not, one, Roblox isn't a game. It is where you make games. It doesn't have any games intrinsically. People have to make it, which leads to a whole nother exploiting of minors. Whole nother part of it that is really kind of brutal. And this is from a law site, Anapol Weiss, or Vice. It depends on where they're from. But massively popular gaming platform is Roblox. Discord, voice and text chat app, which most of us already know. These are the two key digital spaces where 764 thrives. Who is 764, you might ask? We'll get to that. But this is just one of the groups that is subjecting minors to some very brutal shit. On Roblox, predators have been known to lure children via in-game chat, grooming them under the guise of friendship, shared gaming interests. Some abusers create custom games or avatars that subtly mimic the 764 symbolism to identify fellow group members or prey on vulnerable members or players. On Discord, 764 affiliated users set up private servers where minors are manipulated into joining through peer pressure, threats, and blackmail. These servers have hosted graphic content, shared coercion tactics, and coordinated efforts targeting specific children. I understand. I don't think you should even, I don't think Roblox should even be a platform. I understand, but your sister may actually be unintentionally subjecting them to these games. Because I don't know what the symbolism of 764 is. How would I know to look for through my kids? And once they reach a certain age, you're going to be like, okay, I taught you the ins and outs. You're fine. And then you move on. You know, you let the kid play by himself. Well, what happens then is that then they start getting exploited. So, in a recent investigation in Florida, uncovered several minors were enticed to join Discord groups run by individuals claiming allegiance to 764. These children were then encouraged to self-harm on camera with threats of public exposure or harm to loved ones if they resisted. What's up, Green Jeans? How's it going? No, I understand. I'm not saying that you should. I'm saying just be aware. Pay attention for changes in your nephew's behavior. The FBI emphasizes the chat speed. Yeah, whatever was going on last night, I think it had to do with the game I was playing. I think the quarry is so terribly coded that no matter if I put it, you know, because I did put it all the way down, that how to send it, it doesn't send properly. I think that's probably partially intentional. So I plan on recording, playing the quarry and just putting it up on the YouTube. I know that sucks. I know it won't be with me right there, but I don't know what else to do because I can't play the quarry like I wanted to. So the FBI emphasizes that the group targets at-risk children. those that have experienced trauma, depression, social isolation, making their tactics especially insidious. So now we'll get you up to speed on who 764 is. Let's go to the Wikipedia. Yeah. Well, one, I would never let a 5-year-old play on friggin' Roblox. I wouldn't let him have an online game at all. There's no reason a 5-year-old needs that. Buy a shitty old console, give him Super Mario Bros. There's no reason you need the online connectivity. I mean, Roblox is literally a platform where, okay, you know, in the real world, don't talk to strangers, but here, talk to every stranger on the map. Like, yeah, I know. This isn't about accusations. This is about informing. But 764 is a decentralized satanic neo-Nazi transitional sextortion network that is repeatedly adjacent to the Order of Nine Angels, which we'll get into. A far-right satanic terrorist network. Classified a terror network by the United States Department of Justice, the DOJ, and is considered a terrorist Tier 1 investigative matter by the Federal Investigation, FBI. Royal Canadian Mounted Police similarly classifies 764 as an ideological, violent extremist network, and it has been characterized as a satanic neo-Nazi cult by multiple sources. That's 764. Those are the people that are active on Roblox, Discord, Minecraft, probably. Right. Yeah, 764 is, I mean, it's brutal. And that's just one of the cults that operate on Roblox, Discord, all of these. And, you know, the Order of Nine Angels, ONA, O-N-A. We've heard of that. I mean, I've seen that. Satanic left-hand path and terrorist network that originated in the United Kingdom, but has since branched out into other parts of the world. Claiming to have been established in the 60s, it rose to public recognition in the early 80s, attracting attention for its neo-Nazi ideology and activism, describing its approach as traditional Satanism. It also exhibits Hermetic and modern pagan elements into its belief. So, you understand that this isn't just variant religion. This is somebody that is trying to destroy the world. Now, this is from the Anti-Defamation League, ADL. 764 decentralized network, we've already covered that, but they engage in a range of criminal activities: extortion, distribution of CSAM, swatting, SIM swapping, and doxing. Known for targeting and exploiting vulnerable individuals online, particularly children. Their core beliefs are rooted in nihilism, misanthropy, although it also draws influence from extremist movements, most notably satanic neo-Nazi organization, Order of Nine Angels. While some members may hold extremist beliefs, most of their criminal and violent actions are driven by a desire to obtain status and influence within the 764 network, rather than by ideological or political goals. They were once known as the COM. Well, okay, so the whole point of me talking about this is literally to explain some things that are very dangerous right now. So, I mean, the DOJ has arrested, and this happened this year. This was April 30th of this year. They arrested lead individuals: Leonidas Vergianis, also known as War. He was 21. Harsan Nepal, or Trippy, he was 20. You know, these are young people that were exploited somehow, destroyed somehow. I mean, if this just happened in 2025, these guys weren't even born yet 20 years ago. You know, they were one of the first ones on Roblox. I don't think it started with them. This is just my theory. I don't think it started with these guys. I don't think it started with any of this. This started a lot earlier. So these were probably some of the first kids that started playing Roblox and Minecraft. They were made extremists through that. That's what I'm saying is that you can do whatever you want, but you're still subjecting the children to some very strange things. Now, we have all of this information right now, and we have this going on. Now we're going to do a little reacting to this video.
Got fined $30 million to settle a lawsuit over.
Okay.
So Google just got fined $30 million to settle a lawsuit over collecting children's YouTube.
You hear that? That's recent. This video came out an hour ago. They were fined $30 million to settle a lawsuit over children's YouTube data. Freaking children's YouTube data. What is YouTube doing right now? The censorship and trying to get you to give them your ID.
Data. And yet they want us to give them our IDs, credit cards, and video verifications. And they claim, don't worry, we'll keep your info safe. They got hit with a class action lawsuit recently that alleged that Google collected data from children watching YouTube videos. While this kind of data collection has become common, it remains illegal to collect data from children under the age of 13 based on the COPPA legislation.
So part of their censorship is technically illegal. Because if you're a child, you can't provide ID. But the child's going to try and provide some kind of ID. Whether it's a student ID card, something like that, they're going to try. So Google will have that information.
They said they didn't do it, but they're going to be settling the case anyways. And up to 45 million people in the United States could be eligible to receive small payments from the class action lawsuit. So now we know why YouTube is collecting everybody's IDs. Because they're trying to show the people who keep finding them tens of millions and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars, hey, look, we're protecting kids now. We're out.
Yeah, you really think this is for protecting kids? I mean, if it was really about protecting kids, don't you think YouTube Kids would be a lot safer area? And wouldn't have all these scandals?
Asking for ID verification. Their parent company, Alphabet, also agreed in 2019 to pay $170 million in fines and change some practices to settle similar charges by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. What were the charges in 2019? Oh, they had to pay $170 million because they were collecting data on kids. Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're paying fines for things they know is illegal. But see, how big is Google? How much money do they make? I almost guarantee you that to them, this is just how they see the cost of doing business. I mean, I don't think people really understand how rich guys work. You know, when you're this big, it's just the cost of doing business. I once heard a rich guy, you know, talk about, well, because they didn't moderate, they just wanted to shuffle people off to, YouTube's Kids. They didn't actually want to do anything. If they wanted to, they would have set up the protection in the beginning. This is what bothers me. This is what it really comes down to, is if they really cared, if it was really important to them, YouTube Kids wouldn't have had Pipergate, Pipergate 2, all of the scandals. I can't remember all of them. Let alone how some of these poor kids that were on YouTube as YouTube Kids creators, like Ryan, what is it? Ryan, I think you guys know who I'm talking about. Ryan Plays Games or something like that. He was this YouTube Kid star, and he was being exploited by his parents because he can't even keep the money. It's not even his account. It's the same thing that happens to just about every child star. They're exploited. I mean, look at Little Tay. They're exploited and they don't see the exploitation. That's just normal. And you try to call it out and they're just going to look at you and go, oh, well, no, that's not what's happening. That's really what's happening, is they're being exploited. Now, I grew up with computers, but I didn't get into the internet until I was in high school. And I mean, my God, it was the most Wild West time of the internet, and this kind of stuff wasn't happening. because kids weren't on the net. It was businessmen. It was these guys. Yeah, sure. There was probably some BBS boards of porn. Sorry, corn. You know, I mean, that kind of censorship is so stupid. I mean, I literally have marked in my, Twitch thing that I will be using mature language. And yet I can still be demonetized and censored, even though I've already stated that I'm not for kids. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why do I have to kidify myself just because some kids who aren't supposed to be watching me to begin with are watching me? That's not my fault. That's the parents' fault. Let parents parent. Ninetales' sister plays Roblox with her kid. Great. That is one of the best ways to do it. Is it still, worth it? I don't know. I'd rather play, I don't think children should be allowed any online games at all. I mean, honestly, I just don't think online games are safe for kids. I know I didn't raise my kids with online games. They didn't play in online spaces. Or if they did, it was very controlled. And even that was very limited amounts of time. And I don't even think what I did was right. What time, what I think it was called Wolfhaven. Right. Or something like that, which now I found, no, not Wolfhaven. That was much later. I can't remember the one. But the oldest had, some online games and stuff, but the youngest, I didn't. Because I saw the damage, psychologically speaking, what was going on. Most people don't understand that being online in any capacity is extremely destructive mentally. You become addicted to it. You can't stop it. You can't do these things. You keep crying out for these big, you want more. Oh God, yeah. Well, yeah, that's the point is that back then, kids weren't being subjected because they couldn't do certain things. They just didn't know how, let alone, anything like that. So, the simple fact is that kids being online, anybody under the age of 18 shouldn't be online. Flat out. Intranets, local school nets, sure. But anything more? No. No, I think that's what consoles need to shift to, is actually tailoring their consoles to kids without being online. PCs should be for the adults. But see, companies don't want that to happen. They'll lose too much money because there's so much money spent on kids' games, all of this stuff, all of the little bits. I mean, how else can Roblox lose, what was it, 1.2 billion? Or no, that was 1.4. I think it lost $12 billion in evaluation, and it's still there. Right. I don't even know. Technically, it depends on where I look online. I'm either a late millennial or early millennial, because I was born in 79, or late Gen X. I don't think I have a little bit of both. Like, I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I question what went on before, but I don't really adhere to it. I'm just strange. I'll just put it that way. I don't really fit any of these monikers. Not that I'm sure I fit quite a few markers, but there are some very glaring ones that I don't. But the fact is that, here's Google, here's this.
Yeah, by the way, they also had to pay over $1 billion to settle a Texas data privacy lawsuit in May of 2025. What was the lawsuit over? Google agreed to a $1.35 billion data privacy settlement with the Lone Star State over the alleged use of facial recognition, location data, and Chrome incognito. Facial recognition. Let's go over here to the channel and feature
Yeah.
eligibility. Let's go and see what they need if they want us to have advanced features on the website. Oh, look, a video verification, where we have to look up and down to get access to advanced features. Huh, I wonder what they're going to be doing with our data. But it's okay, though. According to this YouTube employee, they're not going to be retaining data from our ID verifications for the purposes of advertising.
For the purposes of advertising, that does not mean that they will not be retaining the data. Right. You know, I mean, back when boomers first started raising their kids, it's like they were afraid that, TV was going to raise their kids. Well, now it really is. And TV is just, the device they're holding. Right? Well, as far as I knew, I was being raised Gen Y. And it wasn't until later that, people started talking about millennials. And apparently I'm kind of on that because I was born in 79. So I'm literally like on the cusp of two different ones. And I just don't think we ever really, I think we were just the nihilistic ones. We knew that the world was going to hell in a handbasket and there was nothing we could do about it. We tried. Gen X, I mean, to me, dropped the ball big. They're not even trying. It's not even so much as they're nihilistic and like, oh, nothing. No, they just want to emulate the boomers. They just want what boomers have. So they're not passing down anything. Like anything anybody younger than them is even trying to do, they fight for no reason other than to fight it. They're not using their brains. They are the most, I will do as I'm told, generation I have ever seen. Like flat out. Like you give them an order, they will do it. And I think that is, which is really hilarious, being that Gen X was supposed to be the rebels, all of this, like, oh, we're going to fight the power, we're not going to take it. And then what do? They bend over and take it. They just give up. Slightest bit of resistance. Oh, I guess I tried. Or at least that's what my brother does. And he's technically a Gen Xer. And I'm just like, what are you doing? The people above him are better, and then I see that in a lot of Gen Xers. You start talking politics or anything around them, they just shut down. They just stop talking. They don't want to do anything about it. They just do as they're told. Which, I mean, yeah, sure.
Maybe it'll be retained for something else. Who knows? But yeah, I guarantee.
Yeah, see, that's what I was saying is that YouTube retaining that data, they say, oh, it won't be held for advertising purposes. Right? Like what happened? I don't know. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it was something in the media. I don't really know what caused people to just shut down. Like they can't talk cognitively about certain things. And they don't get it. They don't understand that these are the things that are important. But see, what is it? Gen Zers are basically the same way. They scream and cry, but they don't really think about what they're doing. And as soon as they're challenged on their beliefs and actually, asked to provide proof, as a general rule, not all of them, they shut down because confrontation is so foreign to them. Having to defend their ideals is so foreign to them. Like, I watch my nieces and nephews. Their mom, I might have, I wouldn't have raised my kids the way she did. I'm not trying to say that she raised them poorly, but it's not the way I would have raised them. But my sister had such a hard time with competition. Like she couldn't handle herself in competition. She always got over competitive and she'd lash out. So she didn't allow for competition in games. I think so, yes. Yeah, the 2000s babies, are Gen Zers. I think. I mean, every time I go to look at one of these things, it's like, which one is right? See, to me, double aught babies would be the millennials. Yeah, my sister is an anti-vaxxer who's vaccinated, but didn't want vaccinations for her kids because my nephew came up with autism right at the same time as when you get the MMR, so she blamed the vaccination. When, oh wait, no, that's when they get diagnosed with autism, is the same year range that you get the MMR. So of course it's going to look like it's connected, but it's just correlation. One, we really shouldn't be diagnosing, well, we should be diagnosing these things like we do. Oh my God. Go away. Sorry, I have a stupid, no, don't, stupid pop-up from one of my programs that I use to clean my computer. Where was I? Oh yeah, vaccinations. So she did this correlation and jumped on the anti-vaxxer movement. And while I think there are reasons to be critical of vaccinations, please do not misunderstand. I'm not saying, hey, oh, if it's given to me, it should be good. No, I think we need to be critical. I think we need to look at it that way, but we can't just throw out vaccinations that have been working for years. I mean, I don't think people really understand that measles, mumps, and rubella, the MMR, is probably one of the hands down most important vaccinations you can get. And I can't remember if it's measles or mumps, but one of those diseases, if you get, literally wipes out your immune system and it has to rebuild. And that's if you recover from it. I think it's mumps. So you have a compromised immune system until your body rebuilds. I think it's mumps. Mumps is the one I think that just wipes out your immune system, and you basically, if you survive it, your immune system is totally wiped out, reset. And you have to go all the way back through it. So it wouldn't matter how many other vaccinations you got if you didn't get the mumps vaccination. So that's why I say it's very important. It's very important that people pay attention. Okay, measles causes permanent spine and lung damage. Okay. Like I said, I'm not a medical guy. I'm not a medical professional. I don't know. Don't take this all with a, like it's gospel. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm doing my best from just memory. But that's why I say we need to be critical of vaccinations, but we can't throw out ones that have a long history of doing the most good, even if MMR may have caused an increase in autism. I wouldn't even advocate for it to be taken out until we can figure out a better way, a better vaccination, because it is so important, in my personal opinion. That would be what I would advocate for, is research on a new vaccination, something that's not going to increase the uptick in autism. But I think autism is much easier to deal with than a wiped out immune system and possible death. Right. And people not understanding how, like in the Discord, I linked a video that was a conspiracy theory video about fluoridation of water. And all of the things that people use to say why fluoridation is evil was literally made up, even though people have been parroting it for generation. Maybe not generations, but at least a generation. That there is no evidence given to the information. And I parroted that information about fluoridation in water. I didn't realize that what information I was reading had no scientific basis. I mean, I literally found it, in the school library, I think, and read the book. That kind of stuff. It's like, this stuff is supposed to be, you're supposed to be able to trust certain sources. Well, now we can't trust anything. We can do all of our own research all we want, but apparently even that's very difficult to actually find any kind of proof. And that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm talking about this Roblox situation and what has been going on with all of this garbage is because it's very important for people to look objectively. I mean, this website is a website called Deep Humor. This guy started out as a joke website, but with all this AI verification.
A lot of you guys didn't know about, especially this recent development of Google having to pay $30 million for collecting child's data. They claim they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, $30 million is such a joke number for Google to pay. A joke number. I mean, $30 million, unless it's only 30 some odd kids, you mean they should be paying $1 million per person they infringed on. We need to make the fines worth something. Or, I don't know, quote unquote, jail the company and have their basic profits just being filtered to the deficit. Just to paying down America's debt. Like all your profits, keep everything that it means to, to make your business keep running. But anything that's profit over the next 5 years just goes straight to the American deficit. Want to see how fast companies start changing their habits and changing the way they do things? Instead of being the cost of doing business, losing profits for 5 years, that would neck a lot of companies. People don't realize how close companies actually play to the edge. Like they use these valuations and they say, oh, we're worth this much. Yeah, but they also don't tell you that they have about that plus 20% in debt.
What they settled anyways. I'm pretty sure Google has the lawyers and the actual legal means to make sure that they can just win the case. So why do they need to settle to begin with? It would be different if it was just like an individual settling a court case, because for one person, those types of legal fees are going to be very expensive. And sometimes it does just save you more money to settle.
And that's one of the other things they don't tell you is that the legal fees for big corporations. Are you kidding me? Most big corporations literally have lawyers that are hired. They're not getting paid on a case-by-case basis. They're getting paid throughout the year. Like, oh, legal fees. And, like, no, they get a freaking wage, an hourly wage for working at the company. I almost guarantee you, keep in mind, that's a theory of mine. It's how I would do it. No, not even firms on speed dial. They literally have lawyers in-house that they pay to make cost-benefit analysis. I mean, it goes all the way back to Ford and the Pinto. They literally knew that the car would blow up in low speed collisions, that it was a loss of life. But to recall the vehicles was more expensive than to pay out the death fees. Their lawyers said, yeah, that's about right. And so they went ahead with the Pinto rather than redesign it.
A court case as opposed to keep fighting it for years. But Google, they've got $1 quadrillion. So why didn't they just try to fight the lawsuit if they knew that they were in the right? So remember,
right? If they knew they were in the right, why settle? Especially for 30 million. One, it's a pittance to them. Two, they could have got all of the fees back anyway instead of settling the lawsuit. I mean, that's part of how lawsuits are settled in the end, with the judgments, is also, if you're not filing with any lawsuit against you that you also want your court fees back, your legal fees back, you're just leaving money on the table. Simple as that. I mean, it's just weird to me that Google would pay out a $30 million lawsuit for children's privacy. I mean, and $30 million is so, I mean, I will say it again, it's so small. Like, that's ridiculously small. Like, I mean, that's like fining you 30 cents. Like, you could find that in your couch. Google could probably vacuum the floors of their various offices and get that amount of money to pay off people. Like, literally find it in their couch.
Remember, they're currently doing a $30 million settlement for allegedly collecting children's data. In 2019, they had to do another $170 million fine for, again, collecting children's data. And then they had to do a $1.375 billion payout to Texas over the alleged use of facial recognition, location data, and
Yeah, like right there. That's just Google. Now imagine what if people started looking too deeply into Roblox, Minecraft. I mean, we've all heard about like the Minecraft cult game. Or not game, but the Minecraft cults you can find. Or if you haven't, yes, there is things you can find on that. I don't know how active or anything they are now, but I mean, this same thing came down about Minecraft years ago. Roblox, now we're back on this. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Why, thank you, T-Row. And welcome in. What's up? We're actually talking about some, nefarious shit. Roblox and how cults are working within Roblox. It's part of this Louisiana, lawsuit against them, is that Roblox isn't doing enough to protect the kids, even though that's what they say. What's up, Infinite? How you doing? And I guess the other side of it is that I'm also talking about, all this YouTube censorship and how, I mean, they want you to put in your ID and all of that. Appointments are done, so woo. I am doing good. I'm doing much better than I was yesterday. But, Google being, well, I'll just run it back for the two new people. Run it back a little bit.
Those types of legal fees are going to be very expensive. And sometimes it does just save you more money to settle a court case as opposed to keep fighting it for years.
Right here. So Google will pay $30 million to settle a lawsuit over collecting children's data on YouTube without parental consent. 35 to 45 million children in the US may have been affected, with each eligible to receive $30 to $60 before. Like, you literally collected children's data without consent. They're not even being charged $1 million per person. Like $30 to $60 before fees, which means like a couple of bucks. Right? Yeah, switch that million to $1 billion. I don't even think they'd sweat then. No, I think my idea of, putting them in jail and having all their, their profits go to paying down the American deficit, not for paying for special projects, not for paying anything else, literally just to pay down the deficit. You can't use it for anything else political. It just pays off the debt. This settlement follows other big privacy cases, $1.375 billion payout to Texas, and $170 million fine in 2019. Now, I don't know what the fine in 2019 was for, but they had to pay Texas alone $1.375 for use of facial recognition software, collecting the data, but, them collecting your IDs is just okay. And they want to institute the same kind of thing in Roblox. So if I understand you correctly, you want to basically verify who's all adults. Well, on the other side of this, that verifies that everybody else who doesn't verify is a child. So you're limiting the targets for pedophiles. Pardon my language, algorithms. You're showing, that it's like saying, oh, hey, 1 in 4 homeless people are women. Okay, yeah, but that means the other 3 are men. That's your choices. So when all these people have verified their data, oh, these are all adults. Okay, so now you know exactly who the kids are. And if you don't verify, you're going to be assumed to be a child, right? Which lumps you in with the other kids. So any pedophile, any creep can just not verify. And then they're lumped in with the kids. So they're in the kids' room. right where they want to be anyway. Like, this isn't protecting children at all. That's my problem with it. That, it's like, while I am a big advocate for just take away the anonymity of the internet, I think that needs to be more voted on. People work towards it and understand what they're doing, because there has to be a lot of safeguards put in place before that could even happen. Trust me, I'm aware of what I'm asking. It's not just as simple as like, oh, just everybody use your real name. No, it means you have to put a whole lot of safety guards in place so that it isn't abused. Like, it's not just off the cuff, and what I mean by take away the anonymity of the internet. Right. And that's the problem is they don't want to actually protect kids. If they did, this wouldn't be a thing. If they really wanted to protect kids, they'd force the parents to parent. They would force the parents to sign their kid up. That you would have to go on record with a video or with your ID and say, I consent to letting my child play this game. Holding your ID next to your face so they match. And you would have to be on record as saying that. But that's not what they're doing, because they know it'd tank their platforms. They don't want people to know how detrimental these platforms are to kids. I mean, if you took the kids off of YouTube, off of Roblox, they'd lose everything. Because basically the only other people that would be there are, like maybe the 10 to 20 million who play Roblox, Minecraft, watch YouTube, that are adults. But you'd also explode in revenue, because then you could talk back to these advertisers, who say, on YouTube, it's like, oh, they can't use certain words. They can't do this because what about the kids? You know what? You could say, what about the kids? They're not there. Then you could actually branch out into other advertising models. See, and that's one of the things I don't understand why YouTube never did. Like, instead of demonetizing someone, demonetizing someone like me because I say a few nasty words, change up what you advertise. Have different classifications. I'm sure that adult toys or whatnot, want to advertise on YouTube, but they can't. Imagine how much money they'd be willing to give if they could. Oh, but we might affect some children. They advertise feminine hygiene products on TV. Is that really any that much different? I mean, of course, I don't necessarily want to be advertised, in the middle of my video to colostomies are us, but who cares? I'm not advocating for that. That's what in-house sponsorships are for. I pick and choose those. And a lot of YouTubers don't do that well. They're really not thinking this through, which either tells me they're dumb, which their bottom line tells me it's not. They're not dumb. Or this is doing exactly what they want. Well, okay, so what is it that they want? Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, who cares? Like, honestly, like, and it's because they didn't want to see it. But my God, their argument is what if kids were watching? Hey, it was prime time. Parent your freaking kid, parent your freaking kids, put them to bed. Or it's late night TV. What do you expect? I remember when it was a big deal when Bart Simpson said ass. Censorship is ridiculous. I mean, it didn't work in the 90s with music. The ones with the labels were the good music. That's the ones you knew you wanted to buy. It didn't stop any kids from buying it. It's just like with video games. Oh, rated, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, so that's the one I want. I want the mature game. I don't want the teen game. It didn't change the habits. That's the thing I'm saying is that this is ridiculous. It shows that they don't care. That's what kills me. They don't care. This is all just for show. Because if they actually cared, they wouldn't be paying out this money. They'd be fighting it because they did do something. You're telling me that Google can't fight this? Bullshit. That's what I'm saying. Wait, you still can't say sucks? Oh, come on. How childish do you have to be? See, and that's my problem. This goes back to what I've talked about before, is we're kidifying people. Is it any wonder why, people aren't maturing, their brains aren't maturing until they're 25? Well, yeah. Undies wrinkled? I don't know how many wedgies I was subjected to growing up. Undies wrinkled. That was, that was painful. Or how many fights I got into. People sit here and whine and complain about, the fights, they're brutal, they're bad. It's like, nah, it's not really. I mean, we weren't going out to kill each other. I mean, how many kids in the 90s were actually, super physically damaged because of fights? Oh, I'm sure that there was some kind of actual, long-term damage. Don't get me wrong. But not to the levels that they want you to think. I don't know how many fights I got into. And the simple fact is that nobody was ever permanently hurt. And we did some brutal stuff to each other. It should have been more long-term damage. But it wasn't. Bullying caused me to stand up for myself. It caused me to get up and stand up for my friends who were also being bullied. It taught me right from wrong. That's what bullying did. I know that that's a hot take, or maybe it's a cold take by now, but I mean, what I've seen so far is this cyberbullying bullshit when it's actually the bullies who are accusing their victims of being the bully. Like, just calling somebody a cyberbully is bullying them. So I can't say what you're doing without bullying you. Like, no, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Like, you're not doing your job. And that's one of the things that really pissed me off about being in school is that everybody was punished for one person's action. And we haven't grown out of that. That was what we did in kindergarten. We don't punish the one who does it. You know what that creates? You really know what that creates? That creates a culture of people telling on the one person or blaming the vulnerable person who can't stand up for themselves. And it hardly ever truly punishes the person who did it, because you're not willing to punish everyone as harshly as you would. Yes, creates a hostile work environment. You're not willing to punish the one who, you're more willing to punish the one who did it more harshly than you would be to punish the group who may have done nothing. So that means you've already lessened the punishment. So the punishment no longer fits the crime. I was trying to talk yesterday about discipline and how almost everybody, as soon as you say discipline, thinks punishment. We've ruined that word. We have twisted its definition, because discipline is about, getting up in the morning, going to work, paying the bills, doing what you need to, having a disciplined schedule, mental discipline, self-discipline. I mean, do you see as going to work on time every day on a disciplined schedule as being a punishment? I mean, you're rewarded with pay. Now, that reward of pay may need to be addressed. But the actual discipline to get up and do what you're supposed to do, is that a punishment? No, it's just what you need to do. If you keep defining discipline as punishment, you will eventually create a negative association with it. So being self-disciplined is a bad thing because you're equating it to self-flagellation, which if you're not familiar, that's self-punishment. I hope I said the word right because it's spelled really weird, but I'm pretty sure it's self-flagellation. Oh, yes, that is when you are being disciplined. But like you said, mandatory training, not actually a punishment. Being disciplined has twofold meaning. And I think we should kind of separate that. You're being punished. I think we started using discipline to take the sting out of being punished. But now it's taken on a whole different meaning. It's like how certain words just change definition over time. And that's wrong. I mean, in some cases, that's wrong. Some, it's perfectly fine. I'm not bitching about, gay, which used to mean be happy, now is, defining a certain section of people who prefer same sex. That's fine. That is okay because we have other words that fit in. But when you're using a word to redefine and create a negative association with something, how they were collecting the data? Oh, that's easy, just through your viewing habits. Remember through YouTube. Remember, when you're watching YouTube, YouTube is watching you. That's why you face the camera. That's why I hardly ever use YouTube watching on my phone. What I was starting to say was the fact that, oh, hey, Cryptic, how's it going? How are you doing, buddy? I'm sorry. So what I was saying right before we left was, using your mobile phone. I use my mobile phone in very specific ways. I'm doing good. Much better than I was yesterday. I don't watch YouTube on my phone. Or if I do, it's very rarely. Because when you start up YouTube, when you start up TikTok, Instagram Reels, all of that stuff, what happens is that you're giving it permission to your camera. So when you're watching, they're watching your eyes. Remember the eye tracker thing that people were all over the internet for right before COVID or during COVID? And where your eyes go. They have that kind of software to review your face. Yeah, I almost guarantee it. Because you give them permission to your phone. How do you think you get targeted advertising when you weren't even on their Wi-Fi or anything? They just know when phones are together, close together. And it's just basic math. I mean, your friggin' Wi-Fi router maps your house. They can tell where you are in your house. Yes, they do. And a Raven and every VTuber, they have it. They have the information. If you're watching YouTube on your phone, you're playing TikTok on your phone, they have it. Yeah, right. Now what's up, Gossip Girl? Welcome in. You missed the really heavy stuff. Now we're just talking about what I consider lighter stuff. Light conspiracies that you can't really do anything about other than, change your habits. Like not using your phone to watch Twitch, to watch YouTube, to watch all of this stuff if you don't want people to have your face. Because Google was fined, several $1 million for collecting user data. I'm sorry that you have to go to the office. And they collect all the data and they're not supposed to. I mean, especially since, according to an old law, COPPA, COPPA, they're not supposed to collect that data on kids. Yet kids are handed a phone to watch YouTube. So how is YouTube getting that data? Well, because they're watching you. I mean, why do you think they put fake, why do you think selfies were such a big deal? Because they were trying to get you to watch, to photograph your face. They wanted the facial recognition software. They want the filters. Like, if you look at these conspiracies, these are ridiculous things that, one, nobody ever asked for, but they make these viral meme things about them. Okay, let me take a real conspiracy theory that was proven to be, if I remember correctly, true, or at least close enough. When AirPods first came out, everybody laughed at them. Everybody thought they were garbage. And then a whole bunch of memes came out about how, AirPods were for the rich people. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak poor, when they've got their AirPods in. They were for the rich. And it changed the whole marketing aspect of AirPods. Now suddenly everybody wants them. Even though they literally are one of the most easily lost, easily stolen. Basically, they're not good. Any kind of wireless connective device, you're reducing your quality on both the hearing and the sound. They break easily. You lose them easily. So they're constantly being replaced. That's why I have headsets. I don't use earbuds. Even back in the day when, the wired earbuds were such a big deal, they got broken so easy. Like, so easy, or get lost or whatnot. Sony stopped making the one the one pair of earbuds I would use. They had this hook that went over the ear so that I would hold them in place properly. I loved those, but I was only ever able to buy one pair because I stopped making them. Yeah, exactly. Hell, I have Skull Candy Crusher, or not crushers, cassettes. Bluetooth connectivity, they work just fine for what I use them for. Now, my plug-in headphones that I use, I spend a bit more money on those. Like $60-$70 for my headphones for what I use, because they're open can so I can hear what's around me. And that's the other thing that I think earbuds really make me mad about. And noise canceling headphones. Stop it. Be aware of your surroundings. They are ridiculously dangerous. You want to talk about what Raven talks about in, stalking and all of that stuff. You got earbuds in, you can't hear shit because, they're like noise canceling and all of this. Well, you're not able to hear anything. Oh, but use our pass through. Why don't I just use headphones? Like, sure, the quality isn't going to be as good, but so what? I would rather be aware when I'm out and about than ignoring the creeper sitting here, trying to get my attention. I'd rather be aware of the creeper who's creeping on me than just sitting there listening to my music or watching my YouTubers. And I'm not aware that some creep is probably going to follow me home. That's how a lot of these things happen. Let alone, trying to tell people that using your mobile device, your cell phone. Yeah. I wouldn't even use them on the bus. Not even safe routes. No. You should be aware. You never know. See, familiarity breeds contempt. There is a reason this statement is a idiom, at least in English language. When you become familiar with your surroundings, when you become familiar with your route, you think it's a safe route. Just because of your confirmation bias that nothing has happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. You can go to the same gas station time and time again. And it's a safe place. They hire a new guy, but these people were nice, These were good people that they worked with, so they wouldn't hire some creep. Well, and then all of a sudden, he's somebody that's skimming your friggin'. Oh, God. Yeah, sure. I'm sure gossip would say that. But you see my point. We live in such an oblivious society. And we're taught to be oblivious. We're marketed to be oblivious. Cryptic's just being a troll now. we're taught to be this oblivious society, to not pay attention to things. You know, that we keep, you know, waving the hand over here and not pay attention. I mean, the fact that Google's been sued 3 times in the last 6 years for not making sure that your information is safe, especially when it's kids. No. I mean, I've heard from the get-go that Minecraft and Roblox are basically hunting grounds of pedophiles. Well, now I find out that there's cults working in them. The dark web murder. Dude, that's funny. Yeah, that would be a very bold statement. You know, I mean, I have lived in some very rough areas, and I could not imagine what these people say about, I have my earbuds in so I don't have to listen to the people around me because they're all idiots. It's like, that's why you have your earbuds out. You know, I mean, hell, if I was living in some of the, if I was a woman, especially a teenage woman, living in some of the areas, I would constantly have my dial pad up 9-1 and plot twist, I'm actually the stalker stalking the stalker. He just doesn't know it yet. Well, I used to be the bully. From junior high to high school, I learned to bully the bullies. They didn't like that very much. But I would constantly have 9-1 on my phone ready to go. So I just have to do 2 button presses, 1 and send. And I would practice that. Not me personally. I've never had to do that. I probably should have in a few cases, but I haven't. I'm just saying that we live in a world where you become very wise lately. I mean, it baffles me. It baffles me that we sit here and listen to these true crime narrations. We listen to, you're looking for a group? Oh, let's effing go. Where are we going? What are we doing? I'm lost. Yeah. If that tells you anything, LFG was looking for group on the old MMOs. That's how old I am. Right? Changing it up in the stalker game. But the fact is that we live in a society that tells us about how terrible things are. What should we do? We hunt people on the registry. Oh man, I can't remember. I was watching this new guy called Coop on YouTube, and he does these like weird conspiracy rabbit hole things. And he was doing this one about this burger barn place that wasn't that far from him, where he actually lives, apparently, like a few towns over. But they were talking about how it could be a child trafficking ring because the store hasn't been open in forever, and how brutal it was. And then once it started getting online attention, suddenly it changed and everybody went away. And they're like, well, but it's in the middle of a neighborhood. How would this even happen? And so they went on to the, SA registry. Okay. And the whole neighborhood was inundated. Like it had 10 times the normal saturation of sex offenders in the neighborhood. So people wouldn't talk about it. In fact, they may have shopped there, and that's the scary part, is that there probably wouldn't be a whole lot being said. Yeah. I wish I could remember what video it was. Because he just does these dark web, they're only like 15, 20 minutes, sometimes as much as a half hour. I ran across him because of his deep dives into Jeffrey Epstein and parts that I had never heard of, like Zorro Ranch, and how Um, in New Mexico, there's this giant ranch that's about this huge. Wait, what? He owns an abandoned high school in the center of town. It's fenced and cameraed, and there's no way. Well, okay. The other thing is that he may have gotten in trouble because of urban explorers. There is a lot of people that will go into places like that. And remember that if you don't put up safeguards like that, you can be held insurance liable if somebody sneaks in and gets themselves hurt. So don't automatically go to not good, but I would also, just because you can explain it doesn't mean that is the explanation. Just saying, that might be a reason, but yeah, I would be careful. I'd start looking at the registries around him, around that school, and start looking at maybe missing persons, registries around that person. Right, it does track, but that, like I said, just because that is an explanation, it doesn't mean it is the explanation. Always do your own homework. Don't just trust anyone. And that includes me. I can be wrong. Please understand that. I have been wrong before and had to apologize. Homework. You know what? It will end eventually. Eventually. Well, okay, sorry. Yeah, right. I said do your own homework. I'm sorry. What I mean is that well, urbex people have a higher tendency of disappearing. Like that China guy that may or may not have set up, found movie props, but it may not have been. Right. See, and that's the part that bothers me. Why would you buy an abandoned high school and not do something creepy with it? I mean, if it was me, if I'm already going to pay the taxes and everything on it, I would set up the fence, the cameras, do the barbed wire and all of that. And I would spend most of the year in there. Oh, that sounds like you found something he wasn't supposed to and decided to hide. Again, the guy Coop, he was investigating a some internet company called Four, but it was also like Cook's Table and stuff like that. And he started wondering if it was actually hear me out, this is actually connected. Wondering if it was like a CIA, FBI front or something like that, because it just didn't make sense. Or no, this was the one that he was close to. That's right. The other one was somebody else was close to. Anyway, so he went to go investigate this house, and they actually, got looks in, and they found out that it is full of garbage. It looks like several, homeless people have squatted there at one point or another, but supposedly the house has had $120,000 worth of renovations somewhere. The power's still on, yet nobody is seen going in and out. Just after he went and investigated the place, and he had receipts, and while he was editing the video, he wanted to do his due diligence and go back to the website and make sure nothing had changed. And he couldn't get into the website anymore. So what he did is he's like, wait, so he tried his phone. Couldn't get into the website. He left the house, went and used McDonald's Wi-Fi, and was able to get into the website. So he personally had been blocked from the website using his Wi-Fi, using his connection. They didn't get his machine address, or else they would have, definitely blocked him from everything. Which that tells me something very much more sus is going on. Somebody with big, long reach. Yeah, IP blocker. You can do that. I can do that through my router. I can block people from, my Wi-Fi and stuff. It's what I do to people I find out that, have tried to hack me. hack my Wi-Fi. Block. So even if they get the right password, they can't get in. Your Wi-Fi and router, like you were saying, Infinite, in that one thing, like viewing somebody's history through their, yeah, you can do that. It's how I used to keep track of my kids and what they were doing is that every night I would check their devices through the router, because it wouldn't matter if they tried to hide it from me. You can't delete it from the router because they had no access. And it wouldn't matter how many different ways or whatnot, it just logs where it went. And, that's how I know my kids were pretty good. Little tips and tricks to, it's like, oh, somebody's, blocking things. There's ways to hide it, but my kids weren't smart enough to do it. Like, they didn't know enough about computers. In fact, most people don't know enough about computers to know that I can just look at the device and scroll through their history of what they used on my Wi-Fi. And if you leave tabs open, it makes it really interesting because your device is keeping those fresh. So it's having to keep pinging it. So if you leave tabs open on your device, yeah, somebody can sit there and see what you've researched recently. It's a simple cross-referencing thing. The joke was pretty good, but it's not something I would ever advocate somebody to do unless you're checking up on your kid. Yes, exactly. Because I was checking up on my kids. Because that's just what a good parent should do. And knowing that as a kid, I like to lie about certain things that, not tell my parents the whole truth, or also knowing that I just might forget about certain things of what I did. Like, it wasn't even intentional. Of course, I'm going to check in on my kids, and see where they go. That's how I knew I could trust my kids. I just think kids need to be taken off the internet. I think kids, if they want video games, need to go back to the olden days of consoles that aren't online. I don't think kids should be allowed online except for at school. And that's just to the school's intranet. The school needs to house their own, LAN, local area network, so that the kids only interact with other kids. They don't need social media. They don't need online video games. They don't need any of this stuff. It is not going to help them in the slightest. This isn't for their entertainment. Kids will always find ways of entertaining themselves. That's the thing is that kids will always find ways to entertain themselves. You can't just hand the kid a tablet, a console, or you can't just keep handing them stuff to entertain them. Make them use their own imagination. Imagination is like a muscle. It must be exercised. And it is good for mental health. I think it's also another reason why we have such a mental health crisis. How many people do you know, maybe even some of you here, can't go to sleep without the TV on? Because you don't like the sound of your own thoughts. You have to have something constantly distracting you from what's going on in your head. Well, there's a good book out there. It's called Fahrenheit 451. Gives a great explanation to where we are now. Almost perfectly. It might be just a little bit more in the future, but we're really damn close. Fahrenheit 451. Right? I love that book. Yeah, see? I think a lot of us have a problem with that because we fight sleep. Why do we fight sleep? Because we're afraid we're missing something. Because we're afraid we're going to miss something. Our generation, and I don't mean like an age generation, but our time period right now in the world, it doesn't matter what age they are, suffers from the world's largest case of FOMO, fear of missing out, than I think any generation ever had. Because news happens so fast, things happen so fast, that just 8 hours worth of sleep means we're missing out on something, somehow, somewhere. When you really got to understand that with that speed, whatever you're missing out on doesn't matter. Because by the time you wake up, it'll be something else. There is no reason. And I used to have the same problem, Nine Tails. That's why I taught myself to meditate. I lay down in bed and I literally focus on the color black, in my head. And every time my brain starts talking to me, I just focus on the color black. I listen to the sound of my own breathing. You want to talk about ASMR? There you go. Asthma. The breathing in, out, in, out. Focus on that. Keep the image of the color black or blue or whatever color you want, but I choose a non-stimulating color. Yes, exactly. And I just listen to my own breathing every time my brain's, because what's funny? Here's a little thing. Why does our brain tell us things? We already know this. Why does our brain talk to us? Why doesn't that little voice shut the hell up? Because we already know. If it's telling us, we already know. Why are you telling us? Why are you talking? Okay, well, yeah, that makes sense. But see, we all need something like that because we don't sleep deeply. I used to go nuts because my wife can't stand having any sound. Oh. Okay. But ever since, my wife and I got married, lived together, she can't have sounds. She can't have music. I used to go to sleep to music all the time. Just to give you an idea, like I couldn't go to sleep without having either Johnny Cash or there was this old video game I used to play called not The Longest Journey. Yeah, Dreamfall, The Longest Journey. I had its soundtrack. I paid for this game's soundtrack because it was such an awesome soundtrack. And I would go to sleep to that with my CD player alarm clock. To give you my age, I used to have a CD player alarm clock. And I would either have this particular Johnny Cash album or that. Right? And, well, everybody has their own little coping mechanism. But I couldn't have that on when my wife and I got together, when we started living together, when we were married. Because she can't have extra music. She can't have extra sounds. It keeps her in this weird state of not quite asleep, not quite awake, or not to the deeper part of sleep. So it keeps her brain at this level that kind of bugs her. And like she doesn't get a good enough rest. And when I started sleeping without other noises, I realized my sleep and my rest was so much better than it had been. Like I didn't realize at what kind of a sleep deficit I had been running at by having noises all the time. By keeping my brain at this cognitive level or this semi-conscious level of having that noise, having that thing, it almost cured a lot of my insomnia. Almost. I mean, I still have bouts of insomnia here and there, but it's nowhere near as bad. Having those extra noises actually stopped me from getting good deep sleep. And so I would just be like, well, what's the point of sleep? I'm tired no matter if I, sleep or if I wake up. And come to find out, it's because I was sleeping, I had bad sleep habits. I was bad at this whole sleep thing. I wasn't taught well. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to work out for the same for you guys. Please understand, I'm saying what happened to me. I was constantly waking up tired. It'd always take me a long time to get going. Oh yeah. We're just getting the storm here rolling in. And so, I mean, again, see, my buddy used to have the same problem, he would sit there and talk about he had to have noise on all the time because he didn't want to hear all those extra noises because, he'd always hear somebody, think somebody's breaking in. And I'm like, well, if you have noises on all the time, how are you supposed to hear the person breaking in? They didn't have an answer for that one. You'd rather not know that somebody's breaking in and just be murked in your sleep? I'd rather get used to the freak out. That's me personally. I'd rather get used to the quiet so I can identify the noises that are strange, that aren't supposed to be there, rather than having something on all the time so I can't hear them. That's me. I understand that. Everybody has different ways of doing things. But now I've probably given some people a little bit of, freak outism. And that's valid. Some people absolutely need, noise to go to sleep to. I mean, white noise generators, pink noise, brown noise, whatever you want to call them, people have different noise generators to go to sleep to. That's fine. And as long as you have a consistent noise that you're sleeping to, that was thunder, your brain will pick up on those other strange noises. Well, there's that. Well, and see, as a kid, I don't know why I started this, but I would put a doorstop underneath my door when I'd go to bed. We had that yesterday. Now we're getting the rain. I don't know. It's just, we talk so much about protecting ourselves, children, and stuff like that we're not really thinking it all the way through. We're not thinking about how, and I'm not saying that this is really what it is, but I mean, if you listen to, TV all night, I think that right. Yeah. We didn't get any rain yesterday other than like a few like pitiful drops. Okay. Yeah. You got a point. Yeah. The kitty shitty box. Yeah. That's in the spare bedroom. Here. The cat literally has her own bedroom now since Tater Tot moved out. Because Tater Tot left, her bed, even though she paid for the bed and the frame, but she couldn't take it to where she went because it was already a furnished room. And so the cat has its own bed. We even bought sheets and a blanket for her. The closet is where the cat box is. Take care of that twice a day. Yeah, exactly. She's got a whole room to herself. It also happens to be the, spare bedroom, guest bedroom if people, come over. But yeah, I mean, people don't really understand and don't really cognitively think about where these habits come from. Like, I don't know why I wanted to, I put a doorstop underneath my door. Like, that was actually really dangerous. But I also, at one point when I was told I couldn't do that anymore, because my parents being my parents. So I just started leaving Legos all across the floor in my bedroom. Like all across the floor. Legos, toys of all kinds. I mean, my room was atrocious, probably about 6 inches deep of toys. Now, not dirt. All the stuff was clean. Okay, I will say that. It wasn't, we're not talking Asmongold. We're talking, just a kid with a bunch of toys. You couldn't go into my room without stepping on Legos. Yeah, well, okay. Because of this, I have built up a resistance. I can step on Legos and not flinch. I can walk on gravel barefoot. Because I grew up having Legos in my room everywhere. Right? Well, it got to the point where I had thick enough callus on the bottom of my feet. Now, this might freak a lot of people out or disgust them or whatnot. Fair warning. I was able to put cigarettes out on the bottom of my foot. Not burn my foot. Like, it wouldn't reach me because the callus was thick enough. The heat wouldn't even get to me. Now, I have since done a lot to assuage this and take care of that. But in my 20s, I wasn't necessarily, the best about taking care of certain parts, because my feet were always that way from the way when I was a kid. I never really put any thought into, oh, yeah, I used to walk on gravel and Legos. Of course, my feet got super thick. I was one of those people that went around barefoot every chance I freaking got. I used to ride a bike barefoot. Yes. I'm actually, well, I use the pumice stone and carve a lot of that off after soaking my feet. Funnily enough, I don't get as much athlete's foot anymore. I wonder why. Like I said, I know that might disgust or freak some people out, but right? But again, that speaks to my point. We don't really think about why certain things happen. We just know what we do, but we don't know why we do it. Self-analysis is a very important thing. I didn't realize that I had so many bouts of athlete's foot because I had a breeding ground on the bottom of my feet. Cold stone massage or hold stone massage? I'm pretty sure you meant cold there. And that sounds cool. No pun intended. That sounds really nice. Hot. Oh, wow. Even more. That sounds even better. But, haven't done it. Don't know, but that sounds cool. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But, again, that's the point is that, think about why we do things. I'm not saying that whatever you're doing is invalid. I mean, you want to sleep with, lights on. There may be a real good reason why. You want to sleep with the TV on. There might be a real good reason why. That's not the point I'm trying to make is the point I'm trying to make is think about what you're doing. That even goes with the whole Roblox thing. How can you build a platform that has no actual game to it? Roblox doesn't have games. It's not a game. It's where you go to play games other people have made. And while on the face of it, it's like, oh, that sounds fun. It's like you don't realize the slippery slope that slides down and fast. How destructive that can be real easy. And how many different people can exploit that. Just like you having certain things you do can be exploited. And being aware of that possible exploitation makes you guard against it. Being aware of why and how you do things can be very helpful. But not necessarily just because you have a coping mechanism doesn't make it bad. But being aware that you have a coping mechanism is a good thing in and of itself. And, to speak about what I was talking about is understanding behind, how do cell phone companies and all of these people get your information? Well, it's because you give it to them. The best piece of advice I ever heard, and I can't even remember who I heard it from first. It's now become pretty ubiquitous. It's everywhere. If you don't have to pay for something, you are being sold. Pure and simple. You don't have to pay for the product. You are the product. And that's anything. I mean, Roblox has child exploitation built right in. Because what do kids get to do? They get to build their own games, potentially making lots of money off the game. So the founders of Roblox were exploiting kids' creativity to make their game. To make their company viable, they had to exploit minors who they couldn't really put to work. Like, their whole business model is exploiting kids. Is it any wonder that, bad faith actors migrated to the platform? I mean, what game has something called the bathroom simulator on it? Public bathroom simulator. Like, Roblox literally allowed that game, that combination of letters got past their censors. Public bathroom simulator. Are you kidding me? And that's a legit thing you can go find on Roblox. Don't get me wrong, there's some cool things that have happened on Roblox, some really cool whatever. But the other side of it is there's some really bad. The takeaway from this is always assess what you're doing. Always look at what you're supporting and who. And I don't mean just on a cursory glance, what they tell you in the press releases. I mean, dig in. Like, actually cognitively think about what you're supporting. Who you're supporting. What actions do they take? What are they doing? Yeah, the dark underbelly. The only problem is that dark underbelly has been growing for almost a decade now. I think Roblox has been out, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember exactly how old it is, but I mean, that dark underbelly has been growing. And, I will just say, I will never touch Roblox. I was already on the fence to begin with, but now after all of this, it's like, nope. Same as I'll never touch Minecraft. It's too exploitable. I mean, again, these are games that are designed to make money off of children's creativity. The whole point is to exploit the minor to make your game worthwhile. Otherwise, it's not a game. I'm steering clear of certain other games that are just basically exploiting your work to make the game worthwhile. They don't actually have a game. It's one of the reasons why some of these games that I play, I don't mind. They're actual games, but others, it's just like, that's not a game. I mean, I love Scarlet Hollow. That is a true game. You're playing out a story. I love Slay the Princess, Inscription, but there's other games that aren't really games. I mean, MMOs are probably the biggest garbage games out there, and I played a lot of them. I loved a lot of them. I played a lot of them. I never got into WoW, but I played a lot of others. But then I realized at one point that these aren't games. They're merchandising. You have to pay to get the cool abilities. You have to pay to get to the cool stories. You have to pay every time a new ability, a new story comes out. MMOs are probably hands down the most atrocious lack of game I've ever seen. Most of them just try to get you to go to the end game, and that's it. Like, they push you so hard to get to the end game, and then once you're there, you're like, what am I doing here? And then they just go to PvP, which, okay, you're focusing on allowing players to verse themselves because you can't think of a better game. I mean, it's no longer about creating something, a story or something like that you want people to experience. It's about creating a story that you want people to pay for, and how much money will they pay for it? The story comes second, not first. And when you realize that exploitation is being baked into these things, maybe we can finally realize what to support. Like, I love House Flipper. There's not much of a game to it, but it's not meant to be a game, nor is it a massive multiplayer online thing. You know, it's just free creativity, just like Minecraft was supposed to be. Except for now, it's everybody has their own Minecraft server and come join my server, come join this. Oh, not in my Christian Minecraft server, except for now how many exploitation stories have come out? How many people have been exploited for their fandom? You know, how many people have been seen, you know, that some of these things are very normalized behaviors when they shouldn't be. And we let it happen, and we continue to let it happen because we don't think about our actions. We don't think about the root of what we're doing, why we're doing a thing. You know, I hope I'm making my point. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. I'm not trying to shame anybody. I'm not trying to point fingers at anything. I'm trying to ask you to look at what you do and why you do it, the root of what you're doing and why. You know, these are important questions we should be asking ourselves. They're important questions I should have asked myself years and years and years ago. You know, who knows how much is buried underneath all of that? You know, how many childhood traumas, but also the childhood trauma is buried for a reason. You know, so you might have good reasons for coping in certain ways. That's fine. Cope. There's nothing wrong with that. Coping is a reasonable mechanism to take care of oneself. Just understand that it might come out in bad ways. And when I'm talking about Roblox, I'm talking about the seedy underbelly, not the, you know, fun games, you know, trying to do certain things. That's fine. But I think Roblox by itself should be nuked. Like, it shouldn't exist. It is built on exploitation and has only become popular through exploitation because it doesn't have a game. You are the game. They're gaming you to create this world for other people to play. And yet they have this, you know, 12 billion or however much valuation. And yet they've only really built a framework. They haven't built a game. You're the one building the game. You're the one going in and playing these other players' games. That's purely exploitation because they're having you do all the hard work. That's not right. You know, it's not right. I mean, you want to know how much of a storyline Minecraft had? You know, how much of a game was actually there? How much lore was there? Watch the Minecraft movie. How much was it actually about the lore of the game, and how much they had to add to the lore of the game to even make a good story out of it? You know, be aware of what you're doing. Be aware of who is exploiting you. Be aware of what they're doing it for. You know, I mean, there is a dark underbelly to a lot of things. A lot of things. YouTube has a dark underbelly. Twitch has a dark underbelly. It's what dark underbelly are you willing to put up with? What are you willing to put up with? Because you can never win. You know, I mean, there's no winning this game. It's what are you willing to support to keep you happy? I hate to put it that way, but that's just realism. You know, people hate on AI. Well, you won't have that choice much longer. AI is going to be in everything. I mean, just literally everything. All we can do is try and work hand in hand with it. All we can do is try and make it work for us in whatever way we can logically do. All we can do is enjoy what is being put in front of us and understand that that's just the way things go. You can never totally win. You're always going to support some seedy underbelly. But what underbelly are you willing to support? What level of it? You know, I mean, there's a famous comic book quote when Marvel and DC crossed over. Now, if you don't understand, well, I mean, I guess most of you have watched the Marvel. Well, Joker was confronted by the Red Skull. And when he found out that the Red Skull was literally a Nazi, he said, I might be crazy, but I'm not a Nazi, and punched him in the face. Like, the Joker wasn't crazy enough to follow them. And I think that's kind of a message we need to take is that there's certain lines we have to draw in the sand that we're not willing to take. Right? You know, and it's also pretty famous that back in the 1940s to 50, the mafia teamed up with the FBI and CIA. It's actually where we ended up getting a lot of the ties to organized crime, was because they were fighting the insurgency groups that were in America. They were fighting the fascists. They were fighting, you know, because a lot of the mafia guys left Italy because of the fascism that was on the rise in Italy. They came here. And so they worked with law enforcement to kick out the Nazis, to kick out the fascists. You know, I mean, what is it? The Sodermeyer children? Soderholm? I can't remember, but it's basically he had spoke out against fascists, Mussolini. He was Italian, but he spoke out against them. And his house was burned. His kids disappeared. Nobody knows what really happened to them. So, yeah, you know, we had, I mean, well, shoot, you know, it was an American eugenicist that gave Hitler his ideas. You know, that's how eugenics got started. And unfortunately, all the wrong lessons, you know, people throw out eugenics like it's some kind of hate crime, which the way most people would use it, yes. But when you're talking about eugenics for taking out diseases like diabetes, like certain other hereditary diseases, and using eugenics to get rid of them, that's one thing. But when you're starting to use it to create basically genocide, no. See, that's a totally different thing. And I can't support that, but I can support gene therapies to help people, which is an outgrowth of eugenics. You know, just to draw that line in the sand, it's like, okay, I'm supporting gene therapy to get rid of chronic diseases, genetic diseases. But I also don't ever think that it would be mandatory for people to have gene therapy to get rid of their chronic diseases. If they don't want, you know, if they don't want the therapy, that's fine. It should always be up to their choice. This actually allows for diversity. This allows for evolution in a proper habit. You know, but if my wife could get rid of her diabetes through gene therapy, damn Skippy. You know, hell, if it's cyborg, you know, some kind of machine implant, as long as it's all checked out and everything, works, good. I'm good with it. But we tried an insulin pump years and years ago, and we actually had to have it removed because it was so bad. It would malfunction and just start pumping insulin into her for no reason. because the insulin pumps didn't work with a meter of any kind. So it just set up insulin at a certain rate, and that's stupid. It should check the blood sugar to see if it needs it or not. You know, I mean, that's just simple science. But anyway, it's about that time. So I'm going to let you all go, and I will hopefully see most of you here tonight.